one of the disadvantages, I think, to having a bunch of regular blog readers who know a lot about audio and visual production, as opposed to me, I know nothing about audio video, is that they can tell me what I'm doing wrong and make me look at it and go, oh my god. So I made a few changes this time, hope to accommodate their suggestions. I have cleaned up a bunch of clutter in the back. There used to be a whole lot of stuff there. Now you don't see it. It's not gone. It's hidden, and that's fine. I've changed the lighting a little. I also did a whole bunch of extensive audio tests.
Testing, testing, testing. Testing 1, 2, 3.
And those seem to have worked out pretty well. So we'll give it a shot. Hope you like this a little bit. I haven't actually been a newspaper reporter all that long, only a couple of years now compared to dozens in the case of some of my colleagues. But in those couple of years, I've heard some things over and over from people who have read the newspaper or people who have been written about in the newspaper, and I thought, boy, I wish I could just tell everybody just a few things about how newspapers work. Actually, a lot of things about how newspapers work, but I'll keep it down to just to 5 things I've heard and the reality behind them. Now, some of these are more about what readers say when they see the paper. Some are more about what people who are written about say, but they're all pretty common. The first one is, well, this. Something a lot of people don't realize is that reporters don't write the headlines. That's not to say there haven't been some wonderful ones over the years that I bet the reporter involved wished he had written, but no, those are written by the desk, the copy desk, the same people who edit every story for style and grammar and spelling and a lot of other things. The reporters don't take the pictures, or rarely take the pictures. We obviously have photographers to do that, but reporter is the one who's often blamed if someone doesn't like the photo that ran with the story. We don't choose where the story goes. We would love it to be on the front page on A1, but it's not up to us whether it goes there or buried in the middle, on the top of the page, on the bottom. Completely out of our hands. The next one is probably the most common one you've heard, and in some odd sense, it's my favorite. Here's a tip. If you read or hear someone saying they were misquoted, 99.5% of the time, you know what it means? It means, oh, I forgot I said that, and I'm really embarrassed about it. I was once interviewing a local bigwig about economic development in the area, and in the course of this interview, he made this nasty little comment about a nearby city, and it was along the lines of, we don't want to end up like them. And I thought at the time it was just a wonderful quote because it got his point across, and I also knew it was a little controversial, and so, I was very happy to use it. Well, of course, he caught a lot of flack for it, and I read in a local paper, the local paper of that city, that he claimed he was misquoted. And of course my boss made a comment to me about it, and I showed him my notes, and I very clearly written down what he said because it was just a beautiful, beautiful comment. And I don't know how he thought it was supposed to be construed, but it was, when you say a place is a dump, it's kind of hard to say you were misquoted. Nowadays, with a lot of reporters having tape recorders and video cameras and video and audio all over the place, it's a lot harder to get away with claiming you were misquoted. Instead, you just got to kind of live with your silly mistake.
Our enemies are innovative and resourceful, and so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people, and neither do we.
If saying you're misquoted doesn't work, the next best thing is to claim. The good thing about saying you were quoted out of context is that you don't have to actually show the context. You don't have to explain it. You just say it was out of context, and people are supposed to assume that the reporter took your words from one question and used it as an answer to another or whatever. And it's all about showing that the media is evil, of course. Now, when the reporter produces notes or a tape showing that you were in fact quoted in context, well, the next thing to say is that it wasn't the context of that conversation, but the context of history.
But I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that there's not enough troops in the Army to force the Southern people to break down segregation and admit the Negro race into our theaters, into our swimming pools, into our homes and into our churches.
In case you didn't recognize him, that was former U.S. Senator Strom Thurmond of South Carolina. The audio was from 1948. The picture was from 2002, and people like him would argue that using his quotes from 48 in the 21st century is not fair because of the context of the 50s, where that kind of talk was much more accepted. If you try to talk like that now, of course, people have a very different view.
So welcome. Let's give a welcome to Macaca here. Welcome to America and the real world of Virginia.
Next on our list is one that you'll hear a lot of, especially around election time. When someone says an article was biased, what they really mean is, I didn't like what you wrote about. When push comes to shove, in fact, you'll find that almost every single story in the paper is absolutely accurate, which leads people to go to extraordinary lengths to prove that somehow there's some inherent bias on the reporter's part, even if there isn't. In one case, a local company hired an intern to go through every story we had written about them and every story we had written about their competitor, rate each one on a scale of positive, neutral, or negative to prove that our coverage of their competitor was mostly positive, whereas our coverage of them was mostly negative. Problem was, they rated a story as negative, as in biased, even if it was just a negative story. When bad things happened to this company and we wrote about it, they said that was negative. When good things happened to their competitor and we wrote about it, they said that was positive. So it didn't matter what our angle was. In fact, the fact was, they just had more bad news coming out from them, and their competitor had more good news. But that made us biased. Now, there's another thing that people will say that actually sounds like a compliment, but in fact isn't. Every now and then I get to write a he said, she said story. I shouldn't say get to write, because I really detest he said, she said stories. But every now and then they come along. And invariably, the next day, one side or the other will call me to tell me they thought the story was fair and balanced. Translation, I thought your story favored my side. Despite what you may have heard, good reporting is not about being balanced. It's about being fair, and it's about telling people the truth, telling people what happened. And sometimes when you do a story, you learn that one side is right and one side is wrong. One side has all the evidence. One side has all the experts agreeing with them. One side has proven to you that it is correct. And you don't want to go write a story that's balanced, because you want to tell people the truth. This side is right, this side is wrong. You certainly present the wrong side, but a story is not supposed to be balanced to give them equal weight. A story is just supposed to tell people what really happened. So hearing something was fair and balanced doesn't mean that. Hearing something's fair and balanced just means, I liked what you wrote. There's a lot more that I've learned in the couple of years I've been a reporter that eventually I'd like to share with lots of people. Things like how a story actually comes together, and how anonymous sources are used, and what happens when someone calls the paper and gives a tip. And maybe I'll do that another time, but today I was happy just to give a few examples of what we hear and what it really means. And as always, thanks for listening.